London Lama Remboje, Nage, Urban Mendation, Gordon, Jason de Boson, Tudio, Susan, no choosing or a ginger, Lobdos, London, or a ginger, London, or a ginger, Lobdos, Trevor, Chow, ginger, Lobdos, Kanda, Juju, Duncan, Jigana, Desha, Omra,
I'm very happy to have all of you here and like to welcome on this very special occasion. The whole idea of practice is based upon that we have to make ourselves as a perfect container or recipient to receive the Dharma. To make such perfect recipient of ourselves is that during this course, during this teaching, one must make certain that one's thought is not involved with neurotic thought, not involved with the conflicting emotion. In addition to not being involved with any neurotic thoughts, one must cultivate the altruistic mind, the altruistic mind of wanting to benefit, wanting to help all sentient beings, which is known as development of bodhicitta. As long as we have such, then we're making ourselves as a perfect recipient or pure recipient to receive such a teaching. So therefore, everyone, please, with a pure motivation, listen to the teachings attentively. The subject of our talk today is the union of the relative and ultimate truth. So in speaking about the union of the relative and ultimate truth, that I would like to explain as a general explanation of the relative truth and that of the ultimate or absolute truth. In general terms, that it is divided as a samsara and nirvana. Samsara referring to our actual life, a life of confusion, a life of delusion. So when we have involved or overwhelmed in that confused state and delusion, that is the samsara. A liberation from that delusion and confusion is the nirvana. And the outcome of the confused state or the samsara is pain and suffering. The outcome of the liberation is ultimate happiness. So in general terms, when we come to the definition of the samsara and nirvana, that the samsara must be understood as the deluded, confused state of mind, and nirvana is the absence of that confusion. And so we are going to speak about those two terms, how that is also in ultimate state inseparably united. So that there is no phenomena that is not within the samsara and nirvana. So that since there is no phenomena that is not within the samsara and nirvana again could be explained through the two truths, the relative and absolute truth. So how that two are related here of the two truths with the samsara and nirvana. Now that samsara, as we have explained, is the confused, deluded state of mind, is the relative truth. And the nirvana, which is absence of the confusion, delusion, liberation from such, is the ultimate absolute. So therefore, that in the sense of the relative truth, that whatever we are perceiving through within this confused state of mind, which we think is a real truth, which as we explained, that the actual meaning is the artificial truth. So we take it as a real, and therefore there is no ultimate truth in such, so it is known as the artificial truth. So to give an example to the idea of the relative truth, in our relative state of mind, again in the state of the confusion and the deluded mind, whatever we perceive, external objects such as a house and so forth, immediately we take it so real, existing on independently, not depending upon anything. We feel it is existing on its own the moment we perceive. To just take the example of the Buddha statue on the table, that the moment you see it, you are very aware of the existing of the perception of existing the Buddha statue on such is you get the feeling it very much exists on its own. The Buddha statue is independently existing there. Now, if from the other viewpoint, if one again examines such, that although it seems to us in our ordinary perception, it is very much existing on its own, but everything that exists has no interdependent or independent existence on its own. Everything is dependent upon each other. It is also explained that everything exists, or we perceive that everything exists because they are dependent upon each other. They are heap of many accumulated things, and therefore we, as a confused state of mind, fail to see that something that exists is the collective accumulation of many things, but we think as it is exists on its very own. In the teaching, it explained that every object that we perceive as existing are really existing like the spears that is put up on the pile. When there are many spears that they are balanced upon each other, then they can stand up, but it cannot stand on its own. Similarly, when many things accumulated together, piled, then the very form that is visible or perceptive to your mind. In the confused state of mind, we think it is existing on its own. That is the relative truth to our basic or our ordinary mind, so it is known as relative. So therefore that nothing, in short, of phenomena can exist independently or on its own. The whole awareness of no object can not existing on its own, it is not only could be seen or understood from the higher realized state of mind, but it could be really understood from the ordinary mind through the reasoning and logical mean that everything exists because that it is interdependent upon the accumulation of many things together, not on its own. There's no one identity that's existing on its own. So since it is not really required to be totally realized to come to that understanding of that fact. So the whole idea of the relative truth is that in the object that is existing, which is again existing within the interdependent connection of the accumulation of many aggregates or the heaps of many things together, one experience its existence. Therefore, due to the confused state of mind of the ignorant, one fails to understand again the ultimate nature of its existence, the ultimate nature of the existence of the particular object or whatever you are perceiving. So since when one fails to experience the ultimate nature of the existence through the ignorance, that state is very much the relative state of the mind that logically you can come to conclusion that it's not existing on its own, but on dependent. Now, in the sense of the relative truth, again, it could be classified in different levels of the relative truth, and that of the from the subtle to the gross state of the relative truth.
Excuse me.
Wait, my mind is a little jumpy. So in the sense of the subtle and the gross state or level of the relative truth, again that in the relative truth one could call such as the wrong view relative truth and that of the authentic relative truth. This is the classification of relative truth. The only example of the wrong view relative truth is that the good example would be looking at the tail of a Tibetan yak. You know, the yak is a Tibetan animal. If you see it from the distance, you all know yak, of course. If you see it from the distance, the tail of yak, it looks one, huge, black. Not the yak, but the tail. We're talking about tail. Huge one. But if you go closer to the tail, it has no oneness. There are many thousands of hairs that look like just one. So there was no such thing as one yak hair, tail that was existing that looks so real as one from the distance. The wrong view, relative truth here, is the moment you think or you talk about yak's tail, you have only a conception or feeling of one big black long thing. You have no feeling of the many hairs of which is gathered and formed into huge, big black formation. So that is in our ordinary life, just a question of being distant and close and distant. So seeing something as one, as which is actually accumulation of many strands of hair, that is known as wrong view, a relative truth, because it is so relevant to our ordinary life, yet we see or take it as one. So similarly, from that example towards the beautiful ground, which is green, you say it's a beautiful green ground. But again, meadow or grounds and garden, whatever, that you look so beautiful. But again, if you logically look at it, which we earlier thought as one, meadow, ground, as one, but it couldn't exist on its own. It is again accumulation, gathering of many grass. But we have never imagined such, but we have labeled and therefore attached to the feeling of one, that whole meadow, whole ground as one. But actually, if we reason it from our idea or logical feeling, it is not existing on its own, one state of such. So now just giving that example of the relative truth from the gross state of mind, and then it can go into very subtle understanding of the relative truth. The whole idea, the reason why it is used as relative truth, the reason why there is truth in such, is that in the confused state or the deluded state of the mind, having grasped to the idea of the something existing on its own, just again giving the example back to getting back to the yak's tail, that whatever you take it is existing on its own or such, to the confused state of mind, the ultimate nature of that existence cannot change through your whatever you take it is. It cannot transform into oneness.
재산 파 선배게 따샤버레스 벽에 따여스 꾼따스 제버레 파르 따샤버던 레 선배 파 따샤버마도 문에 되게 가야 된탐을 요한두고요.
So since that ultimate nature of that does not change, whatever you perceive it is, so it is simply labeled. Mentally you have labeled as existing on its own, yet the whole form of the yak's tail does not become one. Therefore, ultimate nature of that existence does not change. There is truth. Yet because from the very basic or the confused state of mind, not seeing the ultimate nature of such, that we have labels as existence through our, again, grasping and attaching to what we feel, what we are capable of seeing, so that is the relatively true to our perception. So the Dharmic term for this is known as the manner of perceiving everything. Now that again what you perceive, not using any logical form. And without any again questioning of what you are perceiving, how they are being perceived, simply perceiving everything, so it is known in the Dharmic term as a manner of perceiving everything.
This one's dan dorna kunzup demba say teta lodyon khanasige yorsena tandangaran suge teta buge rikpe tashin maje ne tene chedange thön thambege nelu de yan thaba ma tene matonwa marikpa ki tone tene kora kase gore ngobola tene sitarun kan zimba tetarto nawa tela tene ta kunzups don tisigi wares kunzuptambas.
So in really short, the relative simply means that what you perceive, taking it as real, the moment you perceive as it's true or real, without any logical reasoning, without any intellectual questioning of how you have been perceived, what it is, without any such form of logic, simply
examine
without any examining any forms of such, simply taking it as a real or true, accordance with your perception, and so clinging, grasping to that existence is a relative truth. So ultimate is really that the ultimate nature of what is being perceived. That is the ultimate. So that ultimate being the essential nature of everything is the really ultimate. To come to the understanding of that essential nature of all is that one begins with first intellectual and that of the logical means to come to understand the ultimate nature of existence. Having come to understand basic nature of the ultimate to the intellectual or logical means, then by applying meditation upon oneself, developing the primordial wisdom, one comes to actually experience not only that earlier logical means or intellectual means, but in experience by the virtue of the meditation, the ultimate nature of existence, and that is the ultimate that has actualized to applying of the meditation form. So again, by the virtue or development of the wisdom through the applying of meditation upon oneself, one comes to understand that the essential nature of all phenomena as such as there is no existence. Yet we are able to perceive things or phenomena exist because of interdependent connection, and beyond such interdependent connection, the essential nature of the phenomena is not really existing on its own. That possibility, capacity of understanding develops through the meditation when one develops the wisdom. So that is the ultimate nature or state which you understand or learn that the phenomena do not exist. Again, that generally in ultimate stage there is no classification, because if the ultimate stage is being classified as one or two or this and that, then it is not ultimate. The very ultimate stage is really there's no classification at all, formation. But in ordinary form, to relate to our ordinary state of mind and to develop our understanding of that ultimate stage gradually within ourselves, the ultimate stage is being presented in the different classification here, although presented, but the ultimate state itself does not have any classification. So one with the classification, the ultimate state with the classification, and another the ultimate state without the classification. So now that the very subject of the ultimate truth here, which was explained that it could be presented in two different stages or angle, one with the classification and one without the classification. You might all be quite familiar with the Heart Sutra of the Prajna Paramita, which explains here that everything does not exist, such as no form, no sound, no taste, no sensation, and so forth. That is the whole idea of in the teaching or the recitation of the Heart Sutra sadhana or the mantra. So here it is being everything very beginning, sort of block the idea of existing, no form, no sound, no taste. So because it's being sort of rejected the idea of existence totally, because of from that angle, this very formation, this very presentation is known as the ultimate truth of the classification. So here everything is negated, no existing, no form, no sound, no taste. We have a grasping and clinging to the idea of existing of form in order to again cut through or stop that grasping or clinging of the existing of form, to stop, to get rid of that. The negation is here, no form, no sound. So why this particular approach is known as ultimate truth of the classification? Classification is such that when it is taught or said no form, there is also the understanding of the negating the existence of form. There is the form, so there is negating that no form. So since it goes in a stage by stage or gradual step of such that it is used or formed as the classification or towards the going to understand the ultimate truth. So then the next approach, that ultimate truth without the classification, again it comes from the very Heart Sutra, is that form is emptiness, emptiness is form. So now here again that the union, inseparability of the form and emptiness, they're not totally negated one, but shown that union or inseparability, form being emptiness, emptiness is form. So now here again that the union, inseparability of the form and emptiness, they're not totally negated one, but shown that union or inseparability, form being emptiness, or emptiness is the form. So therefore it helps one to understand in this form that when you are explained or brought up the idea of the emptiness, the whole idea of the emptiness is not the extreme emptiness, void, non-existence. But the emptiness has also that two qualities or nature, the emptiness yet their clarity, and emptiness, which is the union of such. So because of that, one comes to the understanding of the union of the relative and ultimate truth. Because everything being empty or emptiness, and since that emptiness has also the quality of the unobstructed nature of clarity, there is the form, is possibility, since, which is the relative, the emptiness being the ultimate, so it is union. And that very form, the unobstructed nature of the clarity of the emptiness, able to accommodate or to experience the form, that form is again not independent, solid, concrete, therefore that is ultimate. So in the idea of the relative and the absolute truth, that you're not rejecting relative truth and try to experience ultimate truth. The ultimate truth in this sense simply to understand the very relative truth which could be understood or which is indeed itself inseparable with the ultimate nature or truth, which has no basic, solid, concrete existence on its own that you think as a relative. So therefore it is not different, separate from the ultimate truth. That is whole idea of the inseparability of relative and ultimate truth. And that is the whole meaning of ultimate. Therefore that although that relative and absolute are inseparable, union, but in order to approach to such understanding at the beginning, it is necessary to separate the relative truth, ultimate truth. The reason why it is necessary to separate is that in many teaching it is also said that without understanding the relative truth aspects, one cannot come to the actualization, perfection of understanding the ultimate truth. So to bring to that fruition, that first one has to begin with relative truth understanding. In order to begin such, that sort of separation between relative and ultimate is necessary, but in ultimate sense, the very relative truth have been understood as non-existence and not on its own independently, that itself becoming the ultimate nature, that there are no separation. And the whole idea of the coming into the realization of ultimate truth is not that you have rejected relative truth understanding and have got to the ultimate, but simply having learned, simply realized that the union, the inseparability of relative and ultimate truth. That is ultimate. So this morning I have touched briefly on the relative and absolute truth, on its again inseparability of the relative and absolute truth, relating with our external phenomena, which is simpler to our mind to really accept, to understand the whole concept of the relative and ultimate truth. And however, that having introduced to the union of the relative and ultimate truth relating to the external phenomena or existence, that this afternoon I would like to speak more upon the relative and ultimate truth relating to the very much inner mind, particularly not using, but in this morning sense we use some of our logic, intellect to understand that the relative and ultimate truth. But afternoon I would like to I'd like to explain the whole again concept of the relative and ultimate truth based upon our mind. How do we really develop such experience through the meditation aspect rather than outer or to the intellectual means? And so I'll be further continuing such a teaching on that. And meantime, there are some time for us to have a question and answer based upon what I have said this morning. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Emptiness has the clarity and the potential for form, but in going the other way, understanding relative truth in the ultimate sense, other than knowing that it's not independently existing, knowing that something is made up of many parts, does that realization itself logically take you to the sense of emptiness in form, or is there some other approach?
It is extremely unusual and difficult to come to the actual realization of emptiness through simply logical understanding of the emptiness. It has to be related with actual meditation to come to the actual realization of emptiness. But again, to apply the meditation upon the emptiness, some form of the intellectual understanding of the emptiness is necessary to apply that meditation, but to come to actual the realization that without the really practice, intellectually one cannot really come up. So because of such, that meditation requires a good understanding of view, and view implying that you have good understanding of the teaching, which mostly again Buddhist term used as learning, understanding or hearing, that you have heard, understood teaching well, which is the quite development of the view. Then you can apply practice or meditation.
I sort of have two questions. Does the tail of the yak still exist once one has absolute truth? This is a live question. And secondly, if we can analyze something on the interdependent, and we come down to a point of there is nothing essential behind anything that we consider existent, and yet we take the idea of samsara and nirvana being interunited and having this inner cohesion, that our delusion keeps us in samsara, that our liberation is in nirvana or in the absolute. Is that in a sense not saying that the absolute is in fact dependent upon the interdependence of samsara? And if it is or is not, then I question what is in fact liberated.
This whole question could be again looked from two different angles. That if we speak such the idea of the relative, samsara and nirvana from the at a present state of mind, yes, then it is quite correct that samsara is interdependent to nirvana and nirvana is interdependent to samsara. And because of such that we sort of separate that two things, the samsara, nirvana, although it is in our ordinary, at the present state of mind, they very much, yes, sort of interdependent. But when we talk about the ultimate reality, ultimate truth, that very ultimate stage of the level of our consciousness or understanding is beyond any interdependent connection. And that realization of the nirvana, which is ultimate, is again going beyond the experience of the inseparability of samsara and nirvana. That is the ultimate. An ultimate state is going beyond such. So at the present state of our mentality, the samsara and nirvana, it is very much what you have felt and explained, that they are sort of sounds interdependent. But the ultimate state of the nirvana is not.
And what is liberated?
The beyondness, when you get beyond.
There's nothing to liberate.
And does that state exist? That ultimate state, does it exist?
Understand.
In what way?
Is there one among us who experiences it? Can that be experienced by a human being, that ultimate state?
In the yes.
Sure, why not? It has to be experienced or realized. You cannot walk towards that place. It has to be realized with the mind realization.
This is concerning traces or bhakchak. Are all traces that one experience coming from individual experience, let's say in this life or previous life, or there is some kind of collective pool of these traces, like alaya vijnana or something, that they would come into one's awareness from some kind of collective place. And also I'm interested in, when one goes from lifetime to lifetime, where are these traces recorded? Where is the memory that carries from life to life recorded? Tibetan teaching is that the mind then comes into the heart, and then exits. Where is this memory recorded?
The one experiences the karma, or in your case as the habitual pattern. As long as we have a grasping, clinging to the dualistic idea, and the karma is experienced individually and that of the collective karma both. It is experienced because we have the notion of the fixation upon the dualistic idea. So when the circumstances are met in certain form, that very habitual pattern or karmic habitual pattern is being sort of incited, and therefore you experience karma. So you break the habitual pattern of the dualistic mind, break through such. Then you become victorious over the personal karma and that of the collective karma, because you have broken through the very notion of the dualistic mind. So that is known as a liberation also. So in short, that karma really means the habitual pattern that we have built through the dualistic mind. Then the other question that where it's being stored, such a karma or the habitual pattern which you have asked, is that according to many forms of teaching, particularly that of the Abhidhamma and so forth, that when we die or separate ourselves from the body, and in actually general in our regular life, whatever negative or positive action we engage in, it is very much stored in the alaya consciousness, which is the ground, very much basic, the alaya consciousness. And so it has no really basic formation of where the location in the body, but again it is the alaya consciousness is very much the clinging, the grasping of the dualistic mind. That is very much where it is being developed, habitual patterns.
Achieves ultimate perception, a perception of the ultimate. Does that happen for a brief moment like this, or 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then the obscurations come back again, and then later on another brief moment and the obscurations come back? Or is it a process where, are there human beings that achieve this state where the obscurations don't keep coming back?
Generally that every one of us in the what state of mentality we are, in ordinary and that of the supreme form, that the ultimate nature is very much of the mind, is very much present within us all the time. It is almost inseparable from that ultimate state. We are always there. Again, that because of a tremendous distraction of the mind, although it is always ever present within ourselves, we fail to recognize that very state. It is there. So since we fail to recognize, we are unable to experience such, although it is ever present there. And in my own understanding that one could have such a glimpse of realization of such that ultimate nature of oneself or perception, as according to you put it. So that glimpse of recognition or realization of that ultimate nature is possible through, again, blessing of Guru, his introduction, empowerment, and so forth. But that alone is not sufficient to continue on that very understanding or realization. One needs to develop furthermore clearance, understanding, enrichment of that very realization or experience by, again, meditating, applying meditation regularly upon oneself. That could lead oneself to stabilize, so to speak, of that experience in oneself. So generally that realization and liberation and immediate is possible. It's not impossible, but very rare.
The Karmapa wrote a song, and in that song there's a line where it says, when Samsara and Nirvana fall into step. Could you explain that a little bit, please?
Fall into step?
Into step.
This is Kondeniti.
Like the 2 feet. Together. Yeah, 2 feet, they're going along together.
Yeah. It's very really the song of ultimate, which is known as the ultimate Mahamudra Doha. It's not ordinary song. Because it is the ultimate Doha, it explains here, again, according to the teaching or the songs of His Holiness, that realization of the Nirvana you cannot achieve through rejecting samsara. Try to adapt Nirvana, but it has to come, again, as we have explained, learning that the inseparability of the samsara and Nirvana, not rejecting samsara as negative, and so not taking as Nirvana as positive, attaching to that, but rather that inseparability, understanding inseparability, and therefore come to the fruition like a step. You take the step with your 2 legs, one after another in stages.
Continuation of the question that he asked, and it concerns the interview that His Holiness Dalai Lama gave, in which he said that according to Buddhist tradition, both Buddha Shakyamuni and Kashyapa were considered to attain complete Buddhahood. Yet,
Buddha Shakyamuni
and Kashyapa was, I think, Buddha's successor.
Oh yeah, I see.
And that although they have attained the complete Buddhahood, according to Buddha, they're not the same person. It's not the same consciousness. Like, that they retain their individuality. I don't understand what retains individuality if it's not the memory. Because usually there is a concept that once the complete Buddhahood is attained, there's no more individuality. It's completely, individuality is gone.
It seems that initially that the manner how Shakyamuni Buddha and the other teacher that you have been explaining began.
Is that one of the successor of the Lord Buddha?
Yes.
7. But does His Holiness said that the Shakyamuni Buddha and then one of the successors will be the same realization?
Well, he said that both of them are considered to attain complete Buddha, and I don't know. This is what I read in the interview. And
because the reason I'm saying is that because Shakyamuni Buddha is, we call it Buddha, and the other successors we call it Arhats.
Yes.
So yes, that makes
like it's a big difference. But I think the point that he was making is that when someone attains Buddhahood, then individuality is not lost, And I don't know if that, that is I'm asking.
Now that basically that the fully realized being, when the such term is used as the individual loss, that they are not totally in loss. They have no such potential, but in the sense of this enlightenment to any, on the wisdom aspect that they have completely developed, and because of such development of that they have also developed such a capacity of emanating into many thousand forms to benefit living beings, so that the selfishness is probably absent. But rather than that, the enlightened being, in a general, anybody who is fully realized or enlightened, means that this person has developed the omniscient state of mind or wisdom to actually benefit living beings by emanating uncountable self or being of oneself. That would have been explained that way, probably.
Enlightened person who still has illusory body, has this particular body which is in sand emanation.
Yes, that's what we call Dhammakaya.
Sondra